I met my wife, Kate, when we were in college. I was the geeky college kid while she was outgoing, popular, always partying. I had always admired her from afar, but one day I decided to take a chance by asking her out on a date when we were at a party. She was obviously surprised but said yes to me, albeit politely. However, when we actually went out on a date, our chemistry was undeniable. We went out on dates for 2 months before I officially asked her to be my girlfriend, and she accepted. Kate was quite upfront to me that she didn't believe in marriage as she came from a broken family. Her parents had apparently divorced when she was really young because Kate had walked in to see her mother sleeping with someone else and had told her father. Since the divorce, her mom had completely stopped talking to her, and she pretty much blamed Kate for her divorce. This had affected Kate a lot during her childhood. She had told me at length about how she would cry herself to sleep every night since her mother refused to come and visit her after the divorce. Her dad, on the other hand, was really kind to Kate. He was the only parent she talked with. When we were in our third year in college, Kate told me how her mother had reached out to her out of nowhere, and she seemed really happy about it. I encouraged her to set up a meeting with her mom and hoped that they could reconnect. However, her mother only showed up to ask Kate for money. Apparently, her mother was using drugs and she needed quick cash. When Kate refused, her mother yelled at her and embarrassed her in front of everybody. Kate called me crying and I rushed to pick her up. Since that day, neither Kate's mother nor Kate have ever contacted each other. The reason I have even mentioned this context is because this is why I have always been very careful around Kate because of her past. She had told me from the very beginning how cheating is a big no-no for her, which is obviously understandable. However, Kate was extremely possessive. Being a geeky kid who did well in college, I was also contacted by different people to help them out with my notes, which I didn't mind sharing. But Kate never liked that, and she would have an issue if I ever shared my notes with a female. She argued that as her boyfriend, I should not entertain another female or even help them out. I understood and stopped doing that. Next, she would regularly check my phone, and if I didn't pick up her calls, maybe because I was sleeping or I was in the bathroom, she would freak out and call my roommate. She would get upset very quickly with small matters and then threaten to break up with me, so then I would have to apologize and beg for forgiveness. This happened several times, and then one time, I just stopped apologizing, so then she started crying and yelling at me that I don't love her anymore. Also, every time it was Valentine's Day or her birthday, she would expect me to give her something big and expensive. She would always compare me with her roommates' boyfriends, saying how they were gifted this and that. Since we were both students, there was no way that I could afford expensive gifts the way she wanted, so she would stay grumpy the whole day and refuse to show any type of affection towards me. I would then have to apologize and promise her that I would make up for all of this when I would get a job in the future. Once, she went out with her friends to a restaurant and asked me if I wanted something to eat. I looked at their menu online and asked her to get me one of their burgers, and she agreed. Later, when she brought it to me, she demanded that I pay her for the burger, which I was obviously going to do, but I was really surprised since she was the one who had offered to buy me something. And then here she was asking me for money. I always paid for each and every time we went out for dates, so was it really such a big deal for her to buy me one burger? Nevertheless, I paid her immediately, and then only did she allow me to eat. Unlike her, I have never been jealous, possessive, or controlling in any way. Even after she got into a relationship with me, she continued to party and hang out with her friends. Even though a lot of them were male friends, she would stay out with them late at night or sometimes even spend the night if they were too drunk to drive back. I never doubted her because honestly, I thought what we had was strong, and my philosophy is If someone wants to cheat on you, they will ultimately find a way to cheat regardless of what you do. There was only one incident where I put my foot down when I found out that there were two guys she was hanging out with whom she had previously hooked up with. I found out about this when we were all once hanging out, and I noticed the way these guys would tease her and talk about her tattoos, which were in her intimate places. Later, I asked her about it, and she admitted that she had hooked up with them, but that it didn't mean anything. I told her straight up how uncomfortable it made me, and that I didn't appreciate these guys talking that way about my girlfriend. Kate argued with me that they were just friends, but I told her that she had made me stop talking to my female friends, even though I never had any history with them. But here she was, all buddy-buddy with these two guys. In the end, Kate agreed to not hang out with them. However, as far as I know, they continued to be part of the group, so she would see them constantly at each and every party. Once she didn't return my calls, and I found out that she was at one of the guys' places, and we had a screaming match. Kate kept yelling that I was controlling her, so I broke up with her. She was really shocked by my reaction because this was the first time I had stood up for myself. Kate started pleading that I couldn't just do this to her and that we should talk about it with clearer minds. I did think about it, and honestly, I had started to grow sick of her behavior. So later, when we did talk, I told her that I didn't want to be with her anymore unless she changed herself. Kate started to cry as I listed out one by one everything she had done to me. I told her that I didn't think this was working out, but she told me that she agreed with whatever I said and that she wanted one more chance to prove herself. I told her that I didn't believe her, but she begged me, saying I was the best thing to ever happen to her. I told her that we could take one day at a time, but if she ever went back to her previous ways, I would up and leave. Surprisingly, after that day, Kate worked hard to change. She stopped hanging out with those guys completely. She stopped going out to parties and drinking till late at night. She was less possessive and more respectful of my privacy. She didn't call me 20 times a day to check up on me. As a result, our relationship grew stronger. We communicated more. We would hang out in the library sometimes where we could study together. I started seeing a positive change in her, and things finally felt right. Kate opened up to me about how she had never truly been loved. Hence, she had difficulty accepting that. Unlike her mother, I would never leave her or cheat on her. I understood her perspective, and our relationship continued to grow. Eventually, we met each other's parents. Kate met my mom and dad, who absolutely loved her, while I met her dad. Kate's dad was more cautious about me than my parents were when they met Kate. Her dad asked me a lot of questions, but once he found that I was a grade A student, he was happy with Kate's choice. After college, I got a job in San Francisco, so Kate and I decided to move there. We found a place near my workplace while Kate searched for a job of her own. As the pandemic was just starting, my work from the office changed to work from home eventually. Meanwhile, Kate was finding it really difficult to find a proper job. She did get 2 offers, but both those offers were revoked because she asked them to increase the annual salary. I would tell her how she just needed to find a job, even if it paid less, just for the time being, so that she could eventually switch and find a better one. However, Kate argued that she didn't want to settle for a job that paid less than me, since she didn't want to feel inferior to me. I argued back that this was not a competition, and that I was happy to support both of us as long as she could contribute financially. However, she refused to compromise. We were staying in a 2-bedroom, where I had turned one of the bedrooms into my private workspace. This was my sanctuary, and during the pandemic, I would stay the whole day in the room, working or attending meetings. Kate hated it. She would always keep interrupting me while I was working, telling me how I was at home, but I was still not spending time with her. I would try to make her see how much work I had to finish and how this was important since I was the one paying for our rent and bills. This would then make Kate pissed at me, and she would go off on a rant about how I was showing off about spending money on her, and she didn't really need me. In reality, she very much needed me because she was stuck in San Francisco without a job. And if I had kicked her out, she didn't even have the money to find her way back to her dad's place. However, to maintain the peace, I would keep my mouth shut. During the pandemic, Kate, being jobless, would just sit on the couch and watch TV the whole day. I would wake up in the morning, work out, cook breakfast for us, clean the dishes, and then go into my place while she would just wake up, eat, and sit in front of the TV. In the beginning, I would encourage her to use the treadmill or help me cook dinner, but she would always find an excuse saying she wasn't in the mood. As you can imagine, she put on a lot of weight during the pandemic. It was really surprising since she was always the skinny one of the two of us. When Kate noticed that she had in fact put on weight, she started blaming me and my cooking. She told me that I was using too much oil and cooking only unhealthy meals. So I told her that she was welcome to cook for herself any meal that she wanted. But then Kate would argue how I was not being a supportive partner. As a result, we stopped eating meat because, according to her, we needed to be vegans in order to lead a healthy lifestyle. For her happiness and health, I even did this without complaining. For 2 years, Kate continued to be unemployed. While I supported both of us with my income, it was only in 2022 that she finally got a job. This job paid her significantly less, but I was getting sick of being the only one paying for everything, so I made her accept it. She went to work and on her first day spent 1/2 hour complaining about how much she had to work. She kept saying that she just wanted to quit, but I told her that if she did that, then she needed to move out and find her own place to stay, since I could not afford to keep living with her in this flat. Looking back, this argument changed everything for us, and this was the day I think Kate started to resent me. She continued to work at the job and would come back home tired and in a bad mood. She would refuse to help me around the house, but I didn't mind because regardless of her help, I liked living in a clean environment, so I would do everything around the house all on my own. 2 months after getting a job, Kate suddenly changed. She started dressing up more, spending hours doing her hair, putting on a lot of perfume. The reason I'm even writing this is because I lived with her, so I noticed her change immediately. However, I didn't question it, and I was happy for her since I thought that she was finally starting to fit in. Kate also started to work out by going to the gym every day after the office. As a result, she started to become fitter. During her time at the gym, she would tell me how guys came up to her to talk to her. I was a bit jealous, like any other boyfriend, but I was happy that she was regaining her confidence slowly. Last year in November, Kate asked me finally why I had not proposed to her yet, and how every one of her friends was either married or engaged. To be honest, I had thought about marrying her before, but I wanted her to find a stable job first and bring in a good income, so then we could both get married and work towards our future. I told her my reasoning, but Kate started crying, saying how guys who don't love their girlfriends think this way, and that there was no reason why she and I could not get married since we had been together for so long. I did think about it, and eventually I proposed to her. She was ecstatic and accepted my proposal. She called all of her friends and family members to show off her ring, which was quite big, since I had saved up well over the years. Kate's dad was really happy and even insisted on paying for our wedding no matter how much I refused. He kept saying how she was his only daughter and he wanted to give her the dream wedding that she always wanted. The wedding went really well. My grandparents and family members were shocked to realize just how wealthy Kate's dad actually was, since he had paid for everything that Kate ever wanted in her wedding, starting from her dream venue to extravagant dress with the long veil. The only thing I had paid for was our honeymoon, to be honest. I was kind of glad that Kate's dad had taken care of the entire wedding expenses. Otherwise, I would have surely gone into significant debt, because Kate's choices are not cheap. The last few months of being married to Kate have been blissful. I never suspected anything. nor did I notice any major changes in her. Kate's dad has also moved to San Francisco after his retirement, so we would regularly meet up with him during the weekends. Last week I received a call from Kate's dad. I thought he had called me to inquire about Kate or our plans for the upcoming weekend. However, when I picked up his call, he sounded a bit worried. He asked me where I was. I told him that I was at home preparing dinner, so then he went on to ask if I knew where Kate was, and I said maybe she was at the office or the gym. I wasn't sure, since she had not texted me any updates. Kate's dad went quiet for a moment and then told me that he was going to send me a picture, and he wanted me to tell him if he was going crazy or if what he was seeing was true. I felt a bit worried since I didn't understand what he was talking about. He sent me a picture, and when it got downloaded, I zoomed in to see Kate happily laughing while holding the arms of an older gentleman. My stomach dropped. She and the guy were still in their gym clothes. Kate's dad, who was waiting for me in line, asked me if I knew who the guy was and if he was perhaps her friend. I told him I had no idea who he was, and from the way they were both sitting, they looked more than friends. I asked him where he was and how he clicked this. So then Kate's dad went on to say that he was in the same neighborhood as Kate, since he had come to meet a friend. While passing the coffee shop, he noticed Kate sitting with the guy. He went on to tell me how he immediately knew something was wrong with the way that she was behaving. However, he wanted to double check with me. I thanked him for sending me the picture, since I was really grateful that he had thought of me and reached out to me first when Kate was his daughter. Kate's dad then goes on to say how his wife had cheated on him and he had been blindsided with everything, so he knows exactly what I'm feeling. He mentioned how he never expected his daughter would do something like this and asked me to investigate a bit further before I confronted her. I agreed, so that night when Kate came back home from her supposed gym session, I didn't say a word. I acted like everything was normal as she told me she needed to shower. Later, during dinner, she started to talk about her work, and I just kept nodding, pretending to listen. I did notice for the first time how she always kept her phone in her hand throughout dinner and would text someone in the middle of the conversation as if it was quite normal. When she went to bed, I stayed awake so I could finally have a chance to go through her phone. I know this is a violation of privacy, but you have to understand that I was at my wit's end. And I needed more concrete proof before confronting her. Once she fell asleep, I quietly disconnected her phone from the charger and took it inside the bathroom. Her PIN had always been her dad's birthday, so it was easy for me to access her messages. This is where I found hundreds of messages exchanged between her and the guy whose name was saved as Laurie on her phone. Clearly, she had saved his contacts as a female, so I would not get suspicious. They had exchanged multiple inappropriate pictures with each other. I didn't even know Kate could click such pictures, yet she clearly had, and had also felt comfortable sending them to a complete stranger. Up until then, my mind was working in overdrive. But when I saw messages that they had confessed their love for each other, I finally broke down. Maybe I was a bit too loud because it must have woken up Kate, who banged on the bathroom door asking me if everything was okay. With tear-stricken eyes, I opened the door and she was surprised to see me looking disheveled and crying. I had taken all the proof I needed, so I simply handed her the phone and her eyes widened in shock. She asked me why I had her phone, but I began to pack quietly. Kate must have realized that I knew everything. She broke down and told me how I should listen to her before making any rash decision. I ignored her and kept packing when she started to cry and told me how this was just a guy she had met in the gym and how he kept asking her out. Since she had been overweight, she had felt undesirable for a long time, so she was flattered by his attention. Hence, she had agreed to meet with him, and one thing led to another, and she had slept with him 4 times. She pleaded that the guy meant nothing to her and that I should not leave her just because of this stupid mistake. I scoffed and looked at her in disgust. I was so pissed at her for destroying my trust in our marriage that I could not help but yell back at her that she was a nasty woman for sending those inappropriate pictures and confessing her love for him while still being married to me. I told her how clearly the apple didn't fall far from the tree since she had turned out exactly like her mother. I knew this was going to hurt her, and it did. Kate started to cry and kept justifying how this was just a one-time mistake. But I laughed at her face. Kate pleaded that I should not just throw in the towel when things go hard and that we could easily fix this with marriage counseling. She blocked the guy in front of me and told me that she would stop going to the gym the next day. I told her that this was too little, too late. But she went on to say how I should stay the night and think this over before making such a huge decision. I was pretty tired. I felt emotionally exhausted. However, I didn't want to sleep next to her, so I gave her a pillow and asked her to go sleep on the couch. The whole night I tossed and turned as images of her and that guy kept popping up in my head. The next morning, we both took a leave of absence from our jobs so we could talk things over, and also because we were still tired after staying up the night fighting and crying. Kate sat down and told me that she would never do something like this to me ever again. However, I knew that I didn't believe a word out of her mouth. I told her that I had thought about it long and hard throughout the night, and I had decided that she needed to move out immediately from the place, since my name was on the lease and I paid the rent. I asked her to pack her bags and be gone by the end of the day. She cried and pleaded about how people would talk about us getting a divorce so soon after our marriage. But I honestly did not care. I stood my ground and asked her firmly to leave my place. She kept grumbling about how I was throwing away a good thing, but I ignored her. In the evening, after she was gone, I felt a bit weird being in the house all on my own. From the very beginning, I had lived with her, and I had never imagined a day would come where I would live all alone. However, I was also happy with my decision. Kate's dad later gave me a call to check up on me. He informed me that Kate had turned up at his doorstep and had told him a cock and bull story about how apparently I had cheated on her and she had decided to leave me. I was a bit shocked that she would go to such lengths as to make up such atrocious lies about me just to save her face, but I also knew that she cared a lot about other people's opinions. Kate's dad then went on to tell me how he had known Kate, the picture he had sent me earlier of her, and the older gentleman in the coffee shop. Kate was shocked and embarrassed when she realized that she had been caught red-handed. Kate's dad was furious at her, not just for cheating on me and breaking our vows, but for also making up a ridiculous lie about me. He had then asked her to leave and to find a place with a friend, since he could not bear looking at her after what she had done. He reminded her how this was exactly how her mother had destroyed their marriage, and he didn't want a daughter like her any more in his life. He threatened to cut her off completely, and then went on to tell me how he wanted to make me the sole inheritor of all his assets, which would approximately be at least $2 million, since he has a house back in his hometown which is currently rented, and a house in San Francisco. I was really taken aback that he would even consider me, but it did make sense since he didn't have any other children to give his inheritances to. Kate's dad reiterated that he was so ashamed of Kate's actions and didn't want to reward her for being a cheater. I understood his perspective, since he was clearly still scared after what his ex-wife had done. However, since our conversation, I have been feeling a tad guilty. Honestly, I don't want any of his money or property, but if he does leave me anything, I won't refuse, obviously. However, I do feel bad for Kate, who is technically his family member and deserves to get a share. Should I convince Kate's dad to not cut her out of the inheritance? AITA if I don't tell Kate about her dad's intentions? Update 1. Wow, Reddit can be really harsh. A lot of you have DM'd me giving me a piece of your mind after I posted my story. Clearly the majority of you agree that this is none of my business, and if Kate's dad does make this decision, then it's completely up to him. A lot of you have also bashed me for not standing up for myself and getting a divorce from Kate. Well, unlike in movies and books, divorce is not so easy. Yes, I will be divorcing Kate and have talked to a lawyer about it. However, I did need some time to get my head wrapped around the decision, which was not easy, by the way. My parents and the rest of the family are devastated. My mother cried when she found out how Kate had been cheating on me. This is all just too hard to digest since Kate and I have been together for so long. Kate is the love of my life, so it feels like losing a part of my heart when I think about divorcing her. However, after talking to my divorce lawyer, I feel a bit reassured. Since I don't have any assets, we don't have children, our divorce should be quite simple. Kate has reached out to me several times, but I have not replied back to her. I plan on meeting her directly when I can serve her with papers. Update 2. It's been almost 1.5 months since I last updated, and I have been bombarded with messages from people. I met up with Kate yesterday at our usual cafe. This was the longest time I had gone without seeing her, and I have to say that taking all this time away from her has really put things into perspective for me. I can now see how I deserve to be treated better than the way Kate has treated me in the past. When I saw Kate, she looked tired and had dark circles under her eyes. It seemed like she wasn't doing so well. She informed me how she was staying with one of her co-workers and was currently sleeping on her couch, which was apparently very uncomfortable. However, she didn't have a choice. She told me she was glad that I had set up the meeting since she had been thinking long and hard about everything over the past few weeks, and had decided that she wanted to work hard to repair our relationship. She said she was ready to try again. However, she also mentioned that before we could start afresh, I needed to apologize to her. My eyes narrowed in confusion as I asked her what she meant by that. She then went on to tell me how she had talked to her friends and had come to the realization that the way I had gone through her phone and checked all those messages was a violation of her privacy. She also told me how, since she had never cheated on me before, I should have been more forgiving towards her instead of straight up kicking her out. She told me that for these very reasons she needed me to apologize to her so we could start to work on our relationship. I shook my head in disbelief as I then put the divorce papers in front of her. She looked at me dumbstruck, so I clarified to her that I was indeed divorcing her. I told her that I was glad that she said all these ridiculous things to me, because now I knew for sure my decision to leave her was right. I asked her to not communicate with me further and gave her the card of my attorney. She tried to plead with me to rethink my decision, but I just left her sitting there. Throughout all of this, I have stayed in touch with Kate's dad. I know a lot of people said that there was no way that he would side with me over Kate, but clearly you all are wrong, because he checks up on me regularly while he hasn't spoken to Kate since that day. My parents have also flown in to spend a few weeks with me, so I have been showing them around the city. I think I'm going to be okay, even though it's going to take me a very long time before I can ever trust anyone again. Update 3. I am finally divorced. 7 months ago, I wrote here about how I was divorcing my cheating wife, and today I'm happy to inform you all that I am finally a free man. As many of you predicted, Kate did try to ask for alimony during the divorce since she earns significantly less than me. However, the evidence I had against her proved to be very damning in court, and my attorney was able to argue successfully that she was at fault for the breakdown of our marriage due to her infidelity. I thank my lucky stars again that I never had children with her, otherwise she would have definitely wiped me clean. Kate's dad and I have continued to build our friendship. We meet up for golf during the weekends or just go out to eat. Honestly, I don't care about the inheritance because I genuinely like spending time with him. Despite the tumultuous events involving Kate, her dad and I have found solace, and camaraderie in each other's company. Stay tuned for more stories from Argo relationships.